Okay, so first of all, as always, the shiur that I give should be for the chayalim and everything going on. But I was just made aware that the earthquake just happened in Venezuela in real time. So, the learning that we do tonight should, Hashem should be with them, and everything should hopefully be for good. So, before I start, I will tell you, has anybody here ever heard, I have a podcast, it's called Tanakh and Tea. I'm holding tea in my hand for a reason, I always drink tea. Daniel's heard of it. I just want to make sure nobody's heard of it. Now, I'll tell you why in a second. First of all, of course, shameless plug, I have a podcast, Tanakh and Tea, but also because the topic that I'm doing tonight, 3 episodes ago I did. So I just want to make sure that nobody listens to it, because otherwise you're hearing the same thing. So nobody here heard of the podcast, so fantastic. Okay. The last episode, by the way, is with Rudy Rockman, so if you've heard of him, you could check that one out. But okay, so let's get started. I want to talk about Shabbat. Great topic to talk about. I feel like probably when you come to, Wednesday night, the topic probably has to do with a lot with what's going on in the Jewish calendar. Right now, it's kind of, a dead spot. So it gives us an opportunity to talk about something that happens way more often than the thing that you usually talk about, which is once a year, but it's actually once every 7 days, Shabbat, right? And I actually have a couple of questions when it comes to Shabbat. And I'm going to tell you my questions. First of all, if you were starting a religion, and you had to choose 10 commandments to highlight. Now we know that the 10 commandments are not more important than the other 603, right? But Hashem chose to highlight those 10 commandments, to do that at Har Sinai, to make it a big deal. So there's got to be something to the 10 that he chose. And more than that, there's got to be something to the order that he chose. And I'm asking you right now, if you were starting a religion and you were sitting in the boardroom with all of your other co-conspirators who were starting this religion, how many of you would start off the religion by saying, you know what should be like the first commandment? Shabbat. Before, respect your parents. Before, do not murder. Before, do not commit adultery. Before, do not steal, etc., etc. Now, I say it's the first commandment. It's really the 4th commandment. But the first 3 are all about establishing Hashem. That's logical, right? This is Hashem's video game, and he's giving you the instruction manual to it, the cheat codes. The first 3 is establishing who made the video game. And then the 4th one is really the first one of like what he wants to tell you now. And the very first one is Shabbat, Shomer Shabbat. Kind of crazy. Like it kind of, in a weird way, this actually proves that this is not a man-made religion. No human being would ever do this and think that other people would buy it. That's the first question, a real emphasis on Shabbat. I'm going to give you a second question that's even bigger, which is, anybody here know what the punishment for breaking Shabbat is? So, it depends really how, what happens. If you break it accidentally, then you bring a korban, all good. But if you break it on purpose, and 2 people saw you, and they pre-warned you, right? And then you did it anyway, then it's skila. You're being stoned to death, right? And if you didn't, it's karet, your soul's being cut off, pretty serious, right? Pretty serious punishment. Now, there's something else that we know about Shabbat, which is that Shabbat is a gift from Hashem to the Jewish people. When somebody is converting to Judaism, they can keep kashrut, they can learn Torah, they can do all the things that Jews do. And any non-Jew wants to step up and do it right now, they can do it. There's one thing that we tell converts not to do. They keep it in spirit, but they'll turn on a light bulb, right? They'll get used to keeping Shabbat, but they're not literally keeping Shabbat. Because it's a gift from Hashem to the Jewish people, right? This one thing, Shabbat, is a gift from Hashem to us, and therefore until a person takes on the responsibilities of Judaism, they don't get access to that gift. Well, wait a second. On the one hand, it's a gift, and on the other hand, the punishment for not doing it is death. Now, I want to be clear about the death thing, which is that it would rarely happen. A strict bet din would only do it once every 70 years, because you pretty much have to commit suicide. It's like suicide by cop. You have to be pre-warned, and then you do it anyway, publicly, right? Nobody was going into anybody's houses and pulling them out. But the rules were designed like this, so there's no public desecration of Shabbat, right? When there's graffiti on the walls and other people, throw their trash in the streets. So it was a system. But still, conceptually speaking, the punishment is death, but it's a gift. Imagine I came to you right now and I say, I'll give you he's just dangling the car keys, right? Imagine I say, I'm going to give you a Maybach. Brand new Maybach. I have one condition. If I ever catch you in another car, I don't care if you're in Mexico and you're taking an Uber, I don't care if you're in Israel and you're taking a taxi, I don't care if you're getting a ride from a friend because you're in China, whatever you may be. If I ever catch you in another car, I will kill you. Would you describe that Maybach as a gift? Even if Shabbos is good, even if we enjoy Shabbat, even if we love Shabbat, you wouldn't call it a gift when it comes with, you better keep this gift or I kill you. That doesn't sound like a gift. That sounds like the opposite. It sounds like a form of slavery. Like, keep the Maybach. I appreciate it, right? Even if we like Shabbat, keep it because I don't want that kind of thing hanging over my head once a week. So the question that I have for you is, if Shabbat is a gift from Hashem that only the Jewish people have, and it's this major gift, why is the punishment death? That's not a gift. That's a curse. That doesn't seem to make any sense. That's the question. I'm going to try to pose some answers that won't fit, and then we'll give an answer that will fit. I'll give you the answer first that I don't think, and you can let me know what you think, doesn't really work fully. Shabbat, in a way, the 7-day week, actually proves Hashem. Why does it prove Hashem? Every other iteration of time that we have actually equals to something in the solar system, right? We didn't just make up a month. The word month comes from moon, right? A month is a lunar cycle. Every 29 and a half days, the moon cycles around planet Earth. So we do a 29-day month and a 30-day month. That's why we have 1 day and 2 day Rosh Chodesh, right? 29-day month, 30-day month. And that's what we're keeping track of. The secular calendar tries to equal it, kind of. Then you have a year, right? A year. It's not just some thing that we made up. The year is that every single year on your birthday, that is another trip around the sun. The sun is in the same exact position with planet Earth as it was on the day that you were born. Every single year, July 4th is the same weather because we're in the same relationship with the sun. We didn't just make up this thing of time, right? A day, that's the Earth spinning on its axis, right? So there's sunrise, sunset. These things are not made up. There's something in the sky that we're keeping track of, except there's one exception. The week. The week is nothing. The week is totally made up. There's no such thing as a week. A week is not keeping track of anything. Who said that we should have a 7-day week? Why shouldn't it be a 10-day week, a 20-day week, a 30-day week? You know who said? Hashem. And yet, think about this. The entire world keeps a 7-day week. Think about how much you take that for granted. Imagine if America had a 10-day week, and every week Shabbat would be on a different day. There were cultures in the past that actually try this, and I believe there's some commentary that talks about the time of Megillat Esther, that they even had a longer week, and Shabbat would fall out on a different day each week. Don't quote me on that because I'm just digging through my memory. But there have been, societies that have tried to not do a 7-day week, and it hasn't worked. The very fact that every society that we find, we've been all over the globe, the very fact that every society that we find ourselves in has a 7-day week is a big deal. That is a bracha from Hashem that Shabbat falls into Saturday. And you can make a case that it's illogical. Why is the whole world following a 7-day week? It means nothing. Well, maybe it's from Hashem. Maybe the very existence of a 7-day week proves Hashem. And we know, what's the whole point of Shabbat? When a person keeps Shabbat, what are they saying? They are saying that they believe Hashem created the world. Hashem created the world on 6 days, and then on the 7th day he rested. Right? That's what Shabbat is. Shabbat is a declaration that you believe that Hashem created the world. That's what it is. And so now maybe it makes sense. It's placement. Right? Maybe its placement makes sense because it's not some random thing that we're doing. The very essence of keeping Shabbat is you declaring your faith that Hashem created the world. So it makes sense for that to be the first commandment. That adds up. Anybody agree or disagree? I think that adds up, right? And we know that on Kiddush, Friday night, we say, Vayechulu Hashemayim, v'aretz v'chol tzivam. That's what we're saying. The words that we say in Kiddush is we're saying Hashem created the world, and then he rested. And Hashem rested, we're resting. We believe Hashem created the world. The problem with this answer is maybe it answers my first question. The first question was, why is Shabbat the fourth commandment, right? And we see, I think the placement of Shabbat, the fact that the world has a 7-day week, the fact that no human being would ever make it the fourth commandment, I think Shabbat itself proves Hashem's existence. And when you keep Shabbat, you are testifying that you prove Hashem's existence. After the Amidah on Friday night, when we stand up and we say, V'chulu Hashemayim, it's a thing that you should say it at least with one other person. Because how many people testify in a betin? 2, right? You are giving a testimony. Why is it that Friday night by Kiddush, people stand, by Shabbat day we sit? Because Friday night you're saying these words of V'chulu Hashemayim. You are testifying. What do you do when you testify? You stand. So that makes sense that it's the 4th commandment. It doesn't answer the second question. The second question is, if it's such a gift, then why is the punishment death? It doesn't add up. So let's try to give another answer. Anybody here ever heard the concept that if the Jewish people, if every single Jew would keep 2 Shabbatot in a row, Mashiach would come? You ever heard that concept? Let's dig into what that concept really means. Let's think about this for a second. Mashiach hasn't come yet, which means, point blank, we don't deserve it, right? Who knows what we're doing wrong, but we must be doing things wrong, because if we were doing things completely right, it would come, right? So maybe we are doing avodah zarah, maybe we're doing murder, maybe, sexual things. Who knows, right? Maybe kashrut. Who knows what's the reason? But the point is, we're not in order as a people, right? Clearly. Why should it be that if we keep 2 Shabbatot, all of a sudden it's all good, everything's forgiven? Are we doing good or are we not doing good? Did we do the things for Mashiach? Why is it just like you did 2 in a row, it's forgiven? So I'll give you a mashal. Anybody here work out? Okay. A few people raising their hand. I'm sure more of you work out. So ideally, there are 2 things to being healthy. One is nutrition, eating good, and the other one is movement, actually working out. Ideally, you should be doing both. There are many people, however, who are not at the best at nutrition. They're eating, right? They're having cakes and whatever. They're sweet tooth. But how do they stay in shape? By moving, by working out, right? Ideally, you want to be doing both. But many people stay in relatively good shape, even though they don't eat necessarily 100% correct, but they work out, right? The working out covers up the bad habits of the way we eat, right? That is Shabbat, clearly, right? Shabbat is a spiritual workout. You could be doing this and you could be doing that, but if you are Shomer Shabbat, you are staying in good spiritual health. It covers, ideally you should be keeping kashrut, and you should be keeping this, and you should be keeping that. But if you're not and you're Shomer Shabbat, there are 2 ways in which this helps you. One, you're doing the workout. You're not eating right, you're not spiritually eating perfect, but you're working out, you're staying in shape. There's another part of this, which is when you work out, you end up eating better, right? And so when you keep Shabbat, it makes your spiritual nutrition better. Now, that's a good answer as to explain how if we keep 2 Shabbatot, all of a sudden Mashiach will come. But it doesn't answer the gift being death, like that correlation. That's still hanging over our heads. If I'm giving you a Maybach, and I tell you, if I catch you in another car, I'm going to kill you, you would all decline it. That's not a gift. So what's going on? I'm going to give you the answer. The answer is going to sound ludicrous, and then I'll spend the next few minutes convincing you of my answer, and all of you will agree. So here's the answer. We'll start backwards. The answer, point blank, why does Hashem make the punishment death if this is a gift, the ultimate gift? The answer is, the gift only works if the punishment is death. That's the answer. It's not because Hashem is holding it. The gift only functions. The gift only works if the punishment is death. The gift would not work otherwise. So now we have to explain the gift in order to understand this. Has anybody ever heard of an inverted U-curve? You ever heard of Malcolm Gladwell? He's a famous non-Jewish author. Anybody? Very famous non-Jewish author, Malcolm Gladwell. He has this concept. He calls it the inverted U-curve. What is an inverted U-curve? Inverted U-curve, an upside down U that's curved, right? So like this, right? If I had a whiteboard behind me, it'd make this a lot better, but we'll use our hands. So most people look at life not like this. Most people look at everything in life like it's a straight line up. I'll tell you what I mean. Let's say a person doesn't work out. Would it be good if they worked out once a week? It'd be better. And if they worked out twice a week, it would be better. And 3 times, it would be better. And 4 times. And most people view life like this, right? If you work out 5 times a week, it's better. 8 times a week, better. 50 times a week, better. 100 times a week, better. 600 times a week, better. At this point, I'm sounding ridiculous. It's obviously not true, right? We look at everything in our life that we want more of it. But the truth is nothing works like this. There's no line. Everything in life falls on the inverted U curve. There is a peak value of everything, right? So let's explain this concept. The peak value, let's call it 50, right? And you have 0 and you have 100. So there's an important concept to this inverted U curve that not only do you have a peak value of something, but every point is equal to the opposite point. So I'll explain what I mean. Let's say a person, let's bring drinking water and put it on inverted U curve. If a person doesn't drink water, that's bad. If they drink a gallon of water a week, better. Obviously, at some point, there's a concept of drinking too much water. What happens if you're at level 0 and you never drink any water? Your cells will shrivel up and die. If you drink so much water that you go past peak value and you get all the way to 100, your cells will burst and die. 100 and 0 are completely equal. The result is death. The method is the opposite, right? So let's put working out our inverted U curve again. If a person doesn't work out enough and they want to get better results and they're on level 25 of working out, they need to work out more in order to get peak results. But what if they're working out too much? In order to get peak results, they actually need to go back on the inverted U curve, what you might call the wrong direction. They need to work out less. They need to sleep more. Less is more. More meaning better. Does the inverted U curve make sense? Okay. So everything in life falls on the inverted U curve. Each point is equal. 100 to 0, 49 to 51, right? And you need to do the work in order to get the peak value. Okay. So now that we have this concept, let's throw some things on the inverted U curve now. Let's say I'm Nike and I sell shoes and I only have one type of shoe. Only have one type of shoe. Do you think my sales would go up if I had 10 types of shoes? Certainly would. One is not at peak value of the display that should be when you walk in the store. One is going to be limited sales. If they want better sales, they're going to need to move up this inverted U curve. What if you walk into a Nike store and they have 1 billion shoes? That would be like one shoe. You'd be overwhelmed, right? That wouldn't be effective. They now need to sell less shoes, variety-wise, to sell more shoes. Less is more when you're on this side, more is more when you're on that side, right? Okay, that's an example, the shoes. I want to throw something else on the inverted U curve. What would you say is the number one problem for somebody who's not Shomer Shabbat? What would you say is the number one thing that keeps them from being Shomer Shabbat? What? You're all giving examples that are specific, but that's not the overall thing. I'll tell you what it is. It's freedom. It's not that I don't love Shabbat. I may do Kiddush and I may do the meal and I may go to Tefillah. I love Shabbat, but I want my freedom. I want to be able to go on my phone. I want to be able to go to the beach. If it's a day of rest, then let me chill, right? It's freedom. And what do we value more in America than freedom? That's the number one thing we value in America. July 4th is coming up, right? Freedom, freedom, freedom. That's what we love, freedom. Well, can we put freedom on the inverted U curve? Can there be a thing as too much freedom? So I'm going to give you a thought experiment. Celebrities. Celebrities disproportionately are addicted to drugs and whatever more than the average people in society. That doesn't mean they're worse people, right? They're not worse people. Doesn't mean that regular people are better or worse. But if you look at the stats, the average person in society does not get addicted to drugs on the same level as the celebrity persona. Somebody who is a celebrity, they have a higher rate of getting addicted to drugs. Why is that? Too much freedom. Money plus time equals freedom. If I have level 0 on the inverted U curve, right, and we're talking freedom right now. So if I'm at level 0, that means that I am in prison. I have no access to drugs. I can't get addicted to drugs, right? Now let's say I'm at level 25. That's a person who doesn't have peak value of freedom in their life. That's a person who, let's say, is a single parent and they have to work 2 jobs, right? And they're very, very busy. Do they have the time and money to get addicted to drugs? They can, but not going to be as likely as somebody higher on the inverted U curve. Now, what's the peak value of freedom? That's somebody who let's say he's a CEO of a company, has a great job, has structure, but can step out of the structure when he wants. He doesn't wake up in the morning, or she doesn't wake up in the morning and have nothing to do. Think about your mega celebrity. Let's say Justin Bieber or The Rock, and I'm not picking on them. I'm not saying that they are addicted to drugs, but you could imagine it would be a lot harder for them to get addicted to drugs. Why? Because when they wake up in the morning, they have too much freedom. They have time and money, which equals freedom. They can get up for years straight and not do anything with their day. They need to actually flex the skill of structure in order not to just be bored and do who knows what. And therefore, because they are actually living in a harder existence of too much freedom, a disproportionate amount of them will get addicted to drugs because they're not operating in the right spot on the inverted U curve for freedom. They're all the way over here. You ever hear an addict say, I am a slave to my drug? You're not a slave. You're the most free person we have. You're only addicted to your drug because you have the time and the money to get addicted to your drugs. When do people stop? When do people, if they're an addict, come out and say, I need help? It's when there's consequences, right? When they're moving back on the inverted U curve. As long as they have the time and money, as long as they have the freedom to be addicted to drugs, well, if they're at level 100, 100 and 0 are equal. They are saying, I am a slave to the drug. They're using the terminology of level 0. It makes no sense. They're the most free person we have. But it does make sense because too much water and too little water result in death. It's just a method of how you get there. So the guy who's at 0 is literally a slave, and the person who's 100 will feel like a slave. And the solution is very different. The person who's at 0 needs more freedom, and the person who's at 100 needs less freedom. The person who's at 100 is not a slave to someone else. He is a slave, or she is a slave to themselves. They are a slave not to the other, but a slave to their own inhibitions. And unless they can actually work on their inhibitions, they're going to stay stuck in this. So what does an addict do? They put themselves in rehab. Think about what rehab is. If we went into rehab right now and we're not an addict, we call that jail. We're moving down on our inverted U curve. But someone who's at level 100, they want to improve their life. They lock themselves in so they don't have access to the drugs. They need freedom from freedom because freedom can be slaving. 100 is a slave just as much as 0 is a slave, just a slave to their own inhibitions. We think of freedom as this, the more freedom I have, the better, but it's not true. Freedom exists on the inverted U curve. You need freedom from freedom because freedom can be slaving. When you're over here, you need less freedom to have more freedom. Does this concept make sense? Yeah? Okay, great. So with that being said, now we can talk about Shabbat. And by the way, Judaism in general, this whole conversation is not just Shabbat. It takes macro to Judaism, and I'll give you an example of that in a moment. But let's put Shabbat on the inverted U curve. All week, we exist not at peak value of freedom. All week, we exist where we have too much freedom. And I'll give you some examples. If right now I told you, give me your phone for the next 24 hours, who would have an easy time doing that? I wouldn't. Maybe, would you? And would you think about your phone? If right now, from Wednesday night to Thursday night, you hand in your phone, do you think you'll reach for your phone and think about your phone? Yeah. Come Shabbat, no problem, right? Somebody who's addicted to cigarettes, addicted. They don't want to smoke cigarettes. They try and break their addiction. Tell them to not smoke for 24 hours during the week, and they can't do it. And they'd be bugging out the whole time. Come Shabbat, no problem. I thought you're an addict. Are you an addict or not? Right? How could it be that for 24 hours you have no problem not smoking cigarettes? I've had people tell me that their favorite thing is a 3-day chag. Why? Because they have this addiction or that addiction, and this is a break from their addiction. They get freedom from their addiction. Now, these addictions are not in line with Judaism. So if they're keeping Shabbat, then they clearly care about Judaism. It's a big deal to them. But they're doing something that they clearly don't want to do because they say they love the 3-day chag, but it's breaking Judaism. So do you have self-control or not? Do you care about Judaism or not? It doesn't even make sense. How do we do this on Shabbat? Something magical is going on. How could it be that we show up every week on Shabbat and we have no problems doing the thing that we would struggle with so much? I'll tell you what it is. It's freedom from freedom. That's what it is. On Shabbat, you go into Hashem's rehab. Shabbat, you're the addict all week long who has too much access to their phone and the cigarettes and etc., etc. And then on Shabbat, you move to peak value on the inverted U curve. You go into Hashem's rehab. And now you get to actually enjoy things. Now, after Shabbat, you're going to step out. This world is not meant to be that little piece of heaven that Shabbat is, and I'll give you some examples. When it comes to Shabbat, there's a duality to it, right? We have Lechem Mishneh, we say Shamor V'Zachor, right? A lot of people sometimes ask other people, are you Shomer Shabbat? They won't ask them, are you Zocher Shabbat? Those are two different things. Shomer Shabbat means that you don't do the negative things on Shabbat. You don't break it, right? You don't drive your car, you don't go on your phone. But Zocher Shabbat is the positive aspects of Shabbat. Making Kiddush, eating a meal, sleeping, two separate categories. There are many people who are Zocher Shabbat who are not Shomer Shabbat, right? Very common. And Baruch Hashem, it's less common to not be Zocher Shabbat. And that's a big deal. That's a great thing. Because at least when you're being Zocher Shabbat, what are you doing? You're testifying that Hashem created the world. But why should you be Shomer Shabbat? Because the gift only works if you're Shomer Shabbat. And I'll give you an example. Anybody here ever procrastinate for like an assignment? If you're procrastinating for an assignment, you don't get right. Like let's say you know you have an essay due or this or whatever it is, and you try to waste time by playing a game on your phone or even going somewhere. You don't feel good. It hangs over your head. What happens if, let's say, you have this big thing that you have to do? What happens when Shabbat starts, if you are Shomer Shabbat? All of a sudden, it doesn't exist. Because you can't do it. It's like the cigarette. It's like the phone. Because you know, under no circumstance can I write this essay. Can I smoke this cigarette? Can I go on my phone? All of a sudden, it's non-existent. On Friday night, you drop your problems off and you pick them back up Motzei Shabbat. But for those 25 hours, they don't exist. That only works fully if you're Shomer Shabbat. Because if you're only Zocher Shabbat, right, and you have this big essay due, and you drive on Shabbat, and you do this on Shabbat, then can you do the essay? You can. So it's going to hang on your head in a way that it wouldn't. And the older a person gets, the more responsibility that they have in life, the more people appreciate this aspect of Shabbat. When you're a teenager, it's like, I just want to chill. But when you're an adult and you're really dropping your problems off Friday night and you pick them back up Motzei Shabbat, Shabbat becomes a taste of heaven. It becomes the best thing ever. Why is this important? What happens if someone goes to rehab, but the door's not locked? What happens when they want their cocaine? They walk out. Meaning, the gift of Shabbat only works if the door is locked. And that is why the punishment is death. The punishment is not death because it's Hashem being like mean. Because Hashem has to say you have no choice but to keep Shabbat. And Shabbat only works if it's the most serious thing to you that I absolutely will not break it. Now all of a sudden you have a supernatural ability to not touch the cigarette or the phone. All of a sudden when the rehab is locked, now Shabbat becomes the best day ever. Now it is Hashem's rehab. Now it's freedom from freedom because freedom can be slaving. Now all of a sudden you have this gift that you don't have the whole week. It's the only way it functions. Now I want to tell you something really special about this rehab. Really, really special about this rehab. Which is, you might think of a rehab as like, there are two types of rehabs. There's a rehab where it's like, I'm just locking you in a room so you don't touch the drugs. But then there's the part of the rehab where if you're a celebrity, let's go back to our celebrities, what type of rehab do they go to? It's awesome. It has everything. It's just missing one thing, the drug, right? If they're not an alcoholic, there'll be an open bar, and there'll be massage rooms, and a spa, and basketball courts, and tennis, and pickleball, and food, and this, and that. The rehab is awesome, right? They're not putting themselves into prison. They're not going to level 0 on the inverted U curve. They're going to 50, right? Which means the only thing they're trying to keep out is the cigarette and the phone, right? Think about Shabbat. Shabbat, the Zocher Shabbat, is awesome. Hashem says eat and sleep and chill and hang with family and friends. And it's on me. Whatever you spend on Shabbat, I'll give back to you. It's a black card from Shemayim. Spend whatever you need for on Shabbat. It's a rehab that Hashem gives to us, not just an opportunity to get away from the cigarette, but this becomes the best day ever, where it actually, if you go to a proper rehab and then you see a therapist, what happens when you step out of rehab? Hopefully now you'll be better off. Every Shabbat has the ability. I know for myself, I wish I was the person I was on Shabbat during the week. Every Shabbat I'm like, I wish I was like, but it's hard because I have access to the phone and then this and then that. But still, every Shabbat, it should actually improve your next week afterwards if you really do it right, right? If you really do Shabbat right, it becomes not just a day off from these things, but a day that prepares you better off when you go back to the too much freedom. Make sense? Okay. Now, the reason why this works for Judaism as a whole is because most people look at Judaism like this. Most people look at whatever things that they keep, that they don't keep in Judaism, as I want to do this. It's too, I want my freedom. The truth is, everything in Judaism, the whole Torah that Hashem spelled out for us, the whole thing is peak value of freedom. The whole thing is to keep us from becoming a slave to our own inhibitions. That's the whole point of it, which is why the first commandment, that fourth commandment, is Shabbat, because Shabbat represents the whole Judaism. Shabbat is everything in Judaism because this idea represents everything in Judaism. Why did Hashem put us in Mitzrayim? Why did Hashem put us in Egypt? Why did He make us slaves before He gave us the Torah? I'll tell you why. A person who's in prison, you give them the opportunity to become a CEO of a company and go from level 0 to 50. Are they taking it? In a second. A person who's a celebrity and has all the freedom in the world and they're an addict, and you tell them go to rehab, are they taking it? Maybe that's a hard decision. And even if they know it's better for them, in their heart of hearts, as humans, we love having our Yetzer Hara drives us to go to full thing of freedom, right? It's a lot easier if you don't eat enough food to eat more food. You know what's harder than that? When you're over here and you need to go on a diet. That's much harder. So why did Hashem make us a slave? Because when Hashem comes to us with peak value of life, if He came to us when we are at level 100 and we're slaves to our inhibitions, and He says, here's the Torah, go to level 50, that's hard. Maybe we won't take it. What did He do? He made us slaves. He made this more palpable for us. He put us at level 0 and then said, I'm bringing you out. Not to go from here to here, because then you're the same as over there. It's to go from here to peak value. That's what Shabbat is. That's what Torah is. That's what Judaism is. It's peak value of life. It's a handbook. It's a cheat code for the video game. And Shabbat is the ultimate representation of that. So I think that answers the question of why the punishment is death. It's not a punishment. It's Hashem locking the door. Right? So, it's Wednesday. You could already say Shabbat Shalom. All righty.